So to start off, we're just going to make a very simple character just using a rounded rectangle tool in Illustrator. This is a great process for if you're terrible at drawing like I am, and you still want something that looks sort of presentable. So we're just going to make a simple rounded rectangle, make it nice and round on the edges, take off that stroke, and find a nice little skin color. Just want to make him have skin, and then we can make the body a little bit less rounded, but that should be good. You can give him a shirt so he's not naked, and just mess with that. Let's head over there, and arrange them just for perspective. Eventually we're going to be separating these into their own individual layers. So it's not a big deal, but it's nice to have. And now we're going to make the arm, and this is an important step. We're going to create little circles on the arm that we're going to use as references later. So you can make the circles as big or small as you want. I like making them a little bigger just so it's easier to see. And you want to put them right in the center there. And Illustrator is really good at telling you where the center lines are going to be. You want to link up just like that. Then we're just going to select everything, Alt drag it down, and create the bottom part of the arm. And there we go. It's got a nice little beautiful arm. Now we just drag it over, set up how we like, and size it down a little bit, and we're good. I like grouping it just for this part because it makes selecting it easier and maneuvering around a little easier. But eventually you're going to want to ungroup them, which is pretty easy. I do it really quick here a couple times. Just go to right click on them, ungroup. And yeah, because a very easy mistake to make is changing the color when they're still grouped, and that's going to change the reference dots, and you do not want that. So just go ahead and ungroup these. Which I keep forgetting where to find on the menu. There it is, ungroup. Now you can just select the two big arms and change the color around. I like making it a little darker on the back, just give some nice perspective. And there we are, we got two beautiful arms. I'm going to take the whole thing again, and just drag it down and use the same basic arm shape for the legs. We're going to mess around with the size a little bit. And we're going to give him some pants, but again, we got to ungroup them first. Give him some nice pants. And there we go. He is allowed at elementary schools. Arrange it, send it back, make this one a little bit darker. I like using the little color guide window down there. You can also set up a color palette, which is what I probably should have done. Well, that's not a big deal. Now we're just going to mess around with some colors a little bit, mess around with this head shape, make it a little skinnier. So he looks less like a Frankenstein's minion, more just like, hey, Frankenstein. The doctor, not the monster. We're just going to call him Charles. Now, Charles is looking good, but we see our layers are kind of a mess right now. So we're just going to go ahead, Control X to cut off his head, make a new layer, and Control F to paste it right in place on a new layer. And we're just going to go ahead and call that head. And we're going to do the same thing with the rest of his body parts. So notably we're just going to chop off the body, Control X, Control F, put it right back in the same place on a different layer, and call it the body. Now this is important for when you're organizing your layers to animate later on. Because in After Effects, we're basically going to be using layers for everything. So now we're just going to hide the head and the body so we can select all other reference dots. Finally ungroup this one original arm. And select these. What we're going to do here is select the lower arm and the upper arm separately. Because we're going to want these on different layers so that we can kind of articulate the limbs. We're going to chop off the top with the two dots, Control X and then Control F on a new layer. And just call it the left forearm. And then we're going to select the bottom dot and the bottom hand. Control X, make a new layer, and Control F. Left lower arm, whatever you want. I changed the layer names a little bit later. It's not a big deal. And now we'll just repeat the process for all of these. And there we go, we have some nice layers, although Charles is looking a little weird. Let's just move the layers around a little bit. Put his body down there, put his head up there, and then we're going to want his arm to be behind his pants. And there we go, Charles is looking nice and sexy. Now let's go into After Effects, start this portion of the tutorial. Just create a new document, make it 1080p, Go to File, Import, Import File, and we're just going to select Charles right there. And this part is very important. You're going to want to be sure that you import it as a composition, and for footage dimensions, you're going to want layer size. This is going to allow us to edit all the layers just in After Effects, makes it way easier. So I'll just drag Charles down here, and there he is. Let's size him up a little bit. And there we are. We have all of our individual limbs on all of our layers. Now let's go ahead, just make a white solid behind him so it's easier to work with. And we're going to launch the Duik plugin. And you're going to want to be sure to have the version of the Duik plugin I linked, because newer versions make this process way more tricky and convoluted, so just be sure to get that. Now the first step is we're going to want to parent each of our limbs. You're just going to go ahead and drag a little squiggly on the lower limb to the upper limb. So left lower arm, we're going to drag that to the left forearm. And then just repeat the process. It's going to be lower limbs to the higher limbs. And then we're going to drag the higher limbs to the body. Again, always using the squiggly tool. It's pretty straightforward. And then we're going to drag the head to the body too. What this is going to allow us to do is use the body as a reference for everything. So as you can see, I'm just moving the body and everything else kind of follows it. We're going to go ahead and you see these anchor points are right in the middle. We're going to want to drag these up top into those reference circles we made earlier. This part is very important that you take the anchor point tool and you just drag it right up to the top one. You don't want anything on that lower dot. You're just going to want them to each go up. Let's go ahead and hide his head again. And then just repeat the process for all the limbs. Again, take that anchor point and drag it right up to the top reference dot. Alright, now we're going to want to go ahead and actually create the controllers that we're going to use to animate each body part. So let's go ahead and select the left lower arm, go over to Duik, click Controllers, and go over to Create. And that's going to give us this nice little anchor that we can use to move her hand around. Let's drag it right down to that last reference dot we haven't used. And then repeat the process for each of the limbs. Down right arm, left leg, right leg. And there we are. We have the controllers in place. So now we're going to articulate the skeleton, which sounds a lot scarier than it actually is. All it means is we're going to select the upper forearm, the lower arm, and then the controller for that arm. And it's very important that you select these in this exact order. Upper, lower, controller. Otherwise, things get really weird. I highly recommend doing this just in the layers panel down below. For some reason, try and click on the controllers and the model is really weird. Just go over to IK, click on 2-layer IK, and click Create. And now, as you can see, everything just starts coming together. Yes, it kind of turns into hot dogs there, but that's okay. We're going to fix that in a little bit. And it's cool, but it's bending in the wrong direction. So let's just go over to Effect Controls, unclick clockwise, and there we are. That is one beautiful hot doggy arm. Now we're just going to repeat this process for each of these other limbs. It's going to be the same process for each of the other limbs, upper, lower, controller. And go over, 2-layer IK, and easy enough. Alright, and now you can see all of his arms are looking pretty nice and spiffy. Yeah, look at him dancing, that's pretty good, but when you stretch him far, it kinda gets in the hot dog arms, which is really easy to fix. Just go over to Stretch, turn off auto stretch, and repeat the process for all of his limbs. Or you can leave it on because it looks really cool, but you might want to turn that off. And there we go. Now just by moving the body, we can move around all of the other limbs responsibly. This makes animating individual limbs way easier than just using the puppet tool. And if you want to hide those reference dots, it's really easy. Just go back into the Illustrator file, and so long as you haven't moved either of the files, just find all the dots, Control X. I like making a new layer and just hiding them just in case I want to use them again. And then Control F, put him there. And look at that, we're all set. Charles is on his way to becoming an animated project somewhere.